This entire movie is one great big piece of cigarette propaganda. I seriously cannot think of a single scene in the entire film in which somebody wasn't smoking. So Joker, Folie, Deux is the sequel to the 2019 billion-dollar earning film Joker, directed by Todd Phillips. This is once again directed by him. And it's a musical, or at least part musical. It's also part courtroom drama. It's a giant epilogue to the first film. Arthur is now being held in Arkham Prison for the criminally insane, where he's being held and standing on trial for the crimes that he committed in the first film. He winds up meeting this character that we're all very familiar with, Harley Quinn, who is portrayed here by Lady Gaga. His legal defense team wants him to plead insanity, claiming that he has a split personality. And the whole movie is very much dealing with this idea of the Joker as an image. Is the Joker Arthur Fleck, or is there some degree of a split between the two personalities? I think the first Joker is fantastic. Most people seemed to share that opinion when it first came out. Over the years, I think a lot of people have kind of fallen off that train, and I was surprised going on the internet to see, especially like Letterboxd and IMDb, how many people despise the original and see it as some sort of token to quote-unquote incels. It just seems like a lot of people miss the message of that original film, because you're not supposed to come out of it supporting the Joker and being on his side of things. It's more so just a character study, an origin story for a villain who does heinous things. And you don't agree with the heinous things that he does, nor do you condone them, but you understand what drove him to become the monster that he is. And I'll just say right now, if you didn't like that first film, and you don't think Todd Phillips knows what the hell he's doing with this character, I don't think this is going to change your mind. This movie is very different in some ways, but the cynicism from that first movie and the bleak outlook on society and Gotham specifically carries over. I mean, this is one of the most gloomy, depressing interpretations of this city that we've ever seen. I mean, it's always been portrayed that way with a lot of crime and corruption, but this is like... this takes it to a new level. Everyone is awful. There's really no good guys in the story, because even the prison guards are terrible people. But then again, you don't really feel bad for the inmates because most of them have done horrible things as well. And once again, you're not meant to side with Arthur here, but there's something interesting to explore inside of his psyche here. And a lot of that is brought out through Lady Gaga's performance as Harley Quinn and her reason for being drawn to him. Both of these two actors are excellent. When they're on screen together, it's magical. For the most part, I'm going to talk about some issues that I have with the musical aspect of the film, but I also want to point out some of the supporting characters who leave a mark. Brendan Gleeson as, I guess, the warden of Arkham Prison. Catherine Keener plays Arthur's lawyer. I think she was a standout with the small screen time that she had. As far as the story goes, I did spend the first 2 acts of this movie or so trying to figure out where it was headed, because it felt very thematically muddled. It felt somewhat directionless, and that sounds like a bad thing, but we'll talk about the ending soon, but I have to keep it spoiler-free, obviously. The first act is really just Arthur trying to survive in this prison in which some of the inmates love him and idolize him, and others despise him, want to see him dead. And he's also juggling this relationship with Harley Quinn. I do call bullshit on a few story elements, particularly the way he's able to gain access to Harley. I don't see that happening. I mean, this is a prison for extremely violent criminals, and yet they're able to interact with each other and interact with members of the opposite sex with very little supervision compared to what you would expect given their crimes. Diving into the musical sequences, I actually kind of enjoyed some of them. They're very flashy. Obviously, it's partly Todd Phillips trying to show off his artistic flair. I think he succeeds for the most part. There were times where it came off as a bit pretentious, but some of the ones that didn't work for me were the ones in which they're basically a representation of Arthur's fantasies. They're not actually portraying the characters as singing. It's just Fleck imagining them singing, whereas he's just in La La Land, or I guess you could say Gaga Land. And there are a lot of those musical sequences in which nothing tangible or real is actually happening, and those felt a little meaningless to me, and I look at this as a 2-hour and 20-minute movie that probably could have been 2 hours or maybe even less than that if they cut out some of the unnecessary sequences. Also, the courtroom scenes. Those go on for a long time, and I think some people will be disappointed with the fact that, for the most part, the setting of this film is Arkham Prison and the courtroom. There's not much else outside of those 2 locations, and the trailers kind of painted the film that way, so I wasn't surprised by that at all. But this isn't obviously an action film or anything. It's not a traditional superhero film. I think most people who have seen the original will be able to pick up on that. But they spend a little bit more time in the courtroom than necessary. There are a lot of characters that return from the first film to stand on trial as witnesses. And you could definitely have cut some of that down because most people could probably predict what the verdict is going to be. There's no tension in trying to figure out what the jury is going to think of this dude. So about 2 hours into this movie, I'm feeling very mixed on it. Then the ending happens, which is, I mean, the movie is already going to be divisive in and of itself because it's a musical and because it's a sequel to Joker that probably didn't need to be made. But the ending just made everything come together for me somehow. I was sitting in the car after watching it, and the more I think about it, the more it brought together the whole ideas behind what this film's trying to do. For better or worse, I think the themes are a bit more clear here than they were in the first Joker, so maybe this movie will have less extreme haters, because it's a condemnation of anarchy and the use of symbols or idols to perpetuate anarchic ideas. The way it decides to go about concluding things and bringing those themes full circle is definitely going to polarize audiences. Personally, I think I like it. I don't know. For a movie that felt very directionless for a lot of it and just felt like it was this flamboyant, trying to be artistic musical with a lot of romance, bizarre speeches, and reflections on events from the first film rather than going in its own direction, I have to praise the ending for doing things I didn't expect and wrapping up the story in a way that I think kind of just makes sense. But I gotta be honest with you guys, I watched the film a couple of hours ago. In a few days, weeks, months, or years, my thoughts on this film might change. It's just one of those movies that has a lot of good and a lot of bad, and it's tough to really balance that out and figure out where you fully stand on it. But it left me on a note of satisfaction. I wasn't moved, I wasn't amazed by it, but I think for the most part it succeeds in what it's trying to do. You know what this really is? It's Todd Phillips approaching the people that think that the first Joker was supposed to be some circle jerk that glorifies this character and the idea that it's okay to do bad things just because society sucks and it's horrible towards you. And he's saying, no, you guys are totally missing the point. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. And I think he does it successfully. I'm gonna give Joker Folie à Deux 3 stars. The film drops this weekend. I have no idea if it's going to be as successful as the first one, but if you do go out and see this movie, be sure to let me know down in the comments what you think of it. I'm just expecting the comment sections on some of these larger creators to be absolute war zones because reactions to this film are going to be all over the place. I hope more people can have nuanced discussions about it and understand that there are good things and bad things in a lot of films, even if there are certain things in those films that probably piss you off. I think claiming this to be a 10 out of 10 is just as absurd as claiming it to be a 1 out of 10. So those are just my thoughts on it. Be sure to let me know what you think of it and hit that subscribe button while you're at it if you want to see more content like this. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.